Basically, I'm going to talk about el espejo negro.
What, the black mirror?
Is one of the most dangerous things that you could have in your room, which is basically your TV.
Why?
So your TV, right? It's black, but it also reflects. So they're saying that that's the most dangerous thing you could have facing your bed because of how much shit happens inside the TV. On top of that, it's a mirror, bro. So it's like two portals in one, bro. Like it has static and shit, and it has a mirror itself. So they're saying that if you sleep with the TV facing you, you have bad sleep, that you have drained energy, because beings from other dimensions, bro, are constantly feeding off your energy through that portal. And then also another thing is having a chair in your room.
A chair?
So if you have a chair in your room, any entity takes that as an invitation to stay there and sit down in your room, bro.
I never heard of that. What the f? I lucky don't have a mirror, but obviously everybody has a
TV facing them, bro.
Yeah. No wonder I don't get good sleep. Actually thinking about it now.
I mean, that's what it could be. That's just the whole speculation.
You know what I'm about to do?
What?
I'm about to
put like something over your TV?
No. I'm gonna sleep with the TV on, but with static.
Why the fuck would you do that?
I'm gonna see what the fuck happens.
Yo, this guy, bro, I swear, bro.
After the nuke detonated above the city, unleashing a fireball hotter than the sun, Yamaguchi was less than 2 miles from the epicenter. The shockwave tore through him, hurling his body through the air. His skin burned, his eardrums burst, but somehow he survived. Blind with pain, he stumbled through the ruins of Hiroshima, passing charred corpses and buildings reduced to shadows. With every step, he saw the unthinkable, people walking with their flesh melting from their bodies, their eyes empty with shock. 3 days later, barely alive, Yamaguchi made it home, to Nagasaki. He was explaining the horror of Hiroshima to his boss when a second flash filled the air. It was a second nuke. The same hell he had just experienced was happening all over again. But somehow, against all odds, Yamaguchi survived again. Despite the radiation burns and sickness, he lived on for decades, becoming a vocal advocate for nuclear disarmament. He is the only man in history to have survived both atomic bombings, and most likely, the only man that ever will.
This elementary school principal was just arrested for hosting an alcohol-fueled party with 100 students. On Sunday, January 19th, police were called to a home in Cocoa Beach, Florida, where a large party was being hosted. The owner of the home and the host of the party was 47-year-old Elizabeth Hill Brodigan, right here, who was the principal of a local elementary school. Inside of the home, the police found over 100 juveniles, all wearing matching t-shirts, and a number of these children were very drunk. The police even found that the alcohol was being served out of coolers for these children to just openly enjoy. So when the police first approached Elizabeth's house, she turned off the lights and tried to hide, but there was a medical emergency. One child had been served too much alcohol, and they had to be given emergency treatment. When the police entered the residence, they also found another woman in there, 45-year-old Carly Anderson, who was also a teacher at the same elementary school, and they said that she was highly intoxicated. Now, I really have no idea what the hell was happening here. I don't know how you possibly get 100 students into your house. I don't know why she wanted these students to drink. I don't know what the other teacher was doing there or what other teachers or adults had been there before the police arrived. But this story, especially since the woman was an elementary school principal, is incredibly disturbing. Interestingly, when you search Elizabeth's name, the old page from the school district pops up, Meet the Principal. But when you click on the link, you're met with an error. I'll keep you guys updated on what happens here, but I'm sure the next revelations are going to be very disturbing.
I don't know how people are surprised by the Gino D'Acampo allegations. When I made a video about him spending time in prison, I got absolutely destroyed by all of the Facebook Karens. So it's no surprise to me that Gino D'Acampo has got a dark criminal past. Loads of people in the UK seem to absolutely love Gino D'Acampo until obviously very recently when a bunch of new allegations came out about him. He does still have some very die-hard fans though. So let's talk about the recent allegations and why Gino went to prison. I do actually own a Gino D'Acampo toaster from Asda, so after this video I might be looking for toaster recommendations. In 1998, way before ever appearing on ITV's This Morning, Gino was 21 years old. He was an unknown waiter living in North London. Someone who was very, very well known back in those days was an 80s singer called Paul Young. Now, he was a really popular artist who had hits such as Wherever I Lay My Hat. Gino, apparently struggling for money at the time, broke into Paul Young's house and stole his treasured guitar collection, which was reportedly worth over £4,000, which was obviously a lot more in today's money. He also stole his platinum disc, which was literally irreplaceable. Police investigating the crime actually found that Gino had unknowingly left his DNA at the crime scene in the form of a cigarette butt. They were able to match the DNA off the cigarette to Gino, which in my opinion is just such an embarrassing way to get caught. Gino was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Now, Gino actually reached out to Paul to personally apologize to him conveniently just prior to entering the I'm a Celebrity jungle back in 2009. Gino stated that he was involved with the wrong people and was on the wrong path back then. However, he's now facing fresh allegations about inappropriate behavior at work. So these are just allegations that I have found online. One woman came forward to report an alleged incident during a 2011 magazine shoot. She stated that he stated in front of the crew he would like to turn me over and F me up the A against the kitchen counter. This woman alleges that she was shocked that no one said anything or told him to stop. Another woman reported an alleged incident where he opened the door in his boxer shorts and nothing else and made reference to his genitalia. He said, "Oh, don't worry, it's only small," she alleges. A former co-worker alleged that he confronted a young crew member over ice cream in 2019. He allegedly stated, "If you don't get me a cornetto, I will F your girlfriend." In 2018, he allegedly made a comment about a female co-worker's chest, saying, "Shouldn't we be talking about her T? They're perfect like a mouthful." A woman also came forward to allege that he made vile sexual comments about Holly Willoughby. A number of other women accused the chef of behaviour that they called, quote, "distressing and horrendous," end quote. Gino has denied all of the allegations and is said to be mortified.
On a remote 12-man expedition to Antarctica in 1961, survival depended on each crew member's role. And for 27-year-old Leonid, the role was vital. He was the only doctor. If anyone fell ill, it was up to him to save them. But then, the doctor became the patient. It started with nausea, weakness, and then a stabbing pain in his lower right abdomen. Leonid knew exactly what it was, acute appendicitis. If he didn't act fast, his appendix would rupture, killing him in one of the most isolated places on Earth. With no way to evacuate, no one else remotely trained, Leonid made an unthinkable decision. He would cut himself open. He meticulously prepared, teaching 2 crewmates what to do if he passed out. Then, with only a mirror for guidance, he injected a local anesthetic and picked up the scalpel. The outer layer went numb, but once he reached his organs, there was nothing to stop the pain. His vision blurred, his hands trembled, but he kept going. After nearly 2 hours of agony, Leonid finally removed his infected appendix and stitched himself up. Against all odds, he survived. 2 weeks later, he was back to work, as if he hadn't just performed one of the most harrowing surgeries in history on himself.
Joanna Lopez broadcast. This was some real-life analog horror that happened on American TV. On January 14th, 1989, Channel 5 NBC, Chicago. They were airing the regular Saturday programming, showing like a bunch of segments, like PSA segments. Following that would be the U.S. National Anthem. And remember, 24/7 TV wasn't a thing during this time, so the TV station would sign off at a certain time, leaving just the color bar screen until the broadcast picked up again in the morning. Instead of it showing like the regular, like it showed a picture instead. It showed a missing person. Instead of it just being for a couple minutes, it was there until in the morning.
Reminds me of like the
Selen Delgado. Yeah, exactly. Whenever I saw this, bro.
Channel 5 too, right?
Yeah.
That's mad creepy, bro.
What made it more creepy was the fact that how it looks distorted, not really like a clear picture.
It's very, very dark.
2 years later, it happened again, but it was for only a few seconds. And that was it. But
who is Joanna Lopez?
They couldn't find shit about her, bro. There was no police reports, nothing. People were coming up with theories, conspiracies. The number, it was connected to the youth department of the Chicago police.
I was just about to say we should call the number.
Call it, fuck it.
Star 67 though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what's gonna happen, bro?
I don't know.
Alright, I'm muting myself.
People came up with another theory that she's connected to another person.
Aaron from Ghost Adventure's wife was just arrested for attempting to hire someone to murder him. This is an absolutely insane story. I grew up watching Ghost Adventures. It was one of my favorite shows when I was younger. And Aaron is obviously one of the original 3 cast members. So Aaron and his wife Victoria got married in 2022. They actually had a whole Haunted Mansion themed wedding, and by looking at social media, you'd think they were an extremely happy couple. Aaron even posted a Valentine's Day post for her last month saying how much he loved her. But on March 6, 32-year-old Victoria was arrested in Las Vegas. Apparently, she had been texting an inmate in prison about hiring him to murder Aaron. According to reports that are coming out, one of her alleged texts read, "Am I a bad person because I chose to end his existence, not divorce?" Apparently, Victoria had also told this inmate when and where they would be filming some upcoming episodes of Ghost Adventures. She had talked to this inmate about a $2,500 upfront payment, and she had even already set aside $11,500 for the upcoming murder payment. Now, luckily, authorities found these text messages that were coming into an inmate in the prison system. They found who they were coming from, and they arrested Victoria. But this is absolutely shocking, frightening, and disturbing. Victoria also allegedly texted this inmate this message: "He's asleep right now in the hotel room. I need to know what's going on. Can I get an update? Was it done?" So my best wishes go out to Aaron. This is absolutely horrible and heartbreaking. I can't imagine what it would be like to experience this. And yeah, what an absolutely insane and twisted story to hit the news today.
You ever felt suspicious of someone in a crime case, but then almost felt guilty for feeling suspicious about them? The husband in this case faced a lot of heat after his wife was murdered. He was saying some questionable things to the media, and people felt like he was guilty. We now know once and for all who was responsible. It was the 13th of August in 1981 in Bedfordshire in England. 36-year-old Carol Morgan was a mother of two living in the area with her husband Alan. The pair ran a convenience store on a council estate in Linslade together, and most people regarded them as a normal, decent couple. On the day in question, Alan called the police to claim that he found his wife's deceased body in the storeroom of their shop. He was described as being confused and jumbled on the phone, but not particularly devastated. Now, people react in different ways to trauma, and it could have simply been that he was in shock upon finding his wife's dead body. The murder sent absolute shockwaves through the local community, who had just never experienced anything like this. Carol had been the victim of what officers called a gruesome and frenzied attack, and who could be responsible was a mystery for decades. Alan was an obvious suspect as the victim's husband. Usually, police will always look to the people closest to the victim. But he was interviewed and apparently had a rock-solid alibi for that evening. He told the police that he'd taken the two children to the Odeon cinema that evening in Luton while his wife stayed behind and worked at the shop. So officers were kind of working on the theory that this was most likely to be a burglary gone wrong. £435 in cash, which was a lot of money back then, and some cigarettes were stolen, but a suspect was frustratingly never found. Rumours in the area started circulating about Alan, and some were concerned that he didn't seem to be the kind of grieving husband that they were expecting him to be. He responded by doing some interviews to the local press, and one headline read, "Victim's husband sickened by gossip." In the interview, Alan strangely admitted to being a bit of a womanizer, which is just such an odd thing to say when your wife's been murdered, but does it make him a murderer? No. The interviewer recalled, "When I asked him, 'How do you feel? Your wife has been murdered,' I imagined him to burst into tears. He didn't. He amazingly said, 'I've lost business, I've lost money,' rather than 'I'm devastated, my wife is dead.'" Decades later, a witness proved to be vital. A woman called Jane Bunting was just a teenager when Carol was murdered, but she had some extremely important information to share with the police. In 2018, she came forward to state that Alan had asked her before the murder if her ex-boyfriend knew anyone he could hire to kill his wife. It also came to light that Alan was having an affair at the time of his wife's death with a woman called Margaret Spooner, and that he'd been openly saying to people things such as, "I hate Carol, I don't want to be married to her, I wish she'd die, wouldn't an accident be nice?" He would not only have benefited from the freedom of his wife being deceased, he also would have stood to gain significantly financially. Now, Alan was arrested for having hired a hitman to kill his wife and was found guilty after over 40 years of literally getting away with murder. He was given life in prison, but one important question remains. Who did he hire to actually commit the murder?
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair No one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
In 2006, this teacher, Samson Shelton, strangled Ashley Reeves. She was only 17 years old at the time, and after strangling her, he left her for dead near Belleville, Illinois. After her disappearance, her mother called Shelton many times because they saw the phone logs between them. On top of this, Reeves' friends informed her mother that she'd been seeing an older man. And on top of this, she planned to meet him the night before she disappeared. Obviously, her mother put two and two together. It was Samson Shelton. Following receiving this information, investigators brought Shelton in for questioning. Despite denying so many times, he actually admitted that he had killed her, or believed he had killed her. Miraculously though, 30 hours later, Ashley Reeves was found alive in the woods. It's literally a miracle that she survived this. In terms of sentencing, they sentenced him to 20 years, however he served 17 and was released a few months ago in April 2024. I'm honestly surprised he didn't get life in prison for this. If they didn't find Ashley Reeves in the woods at the exact time they found her, she probably would have died. She was laying on the ground, breathing very slowly. Let me know your thoughts about this case in the comments section below.
Let's talk about some of the craziest true crime documentaries that are coming out in October, because I think we're going to get some of the best of the year. The Menendez brothers are getting a documentary on Netflix where they're actually going to tell their own story. This is of course coming on the heels of the Netflix Ryan Murphy show about them, but in this one they're actually interviewed. Also, I'm Kaylin and I love giving recommendations if you want to follow along. And then 2 days later, we're actually getting a Scamanda documentary on Hulu. That's the story of how Amanda Riley scammed people out of hundreds of thousands of dollars by pretending to have cancer. It was originally a podcast, and so was Sweet Bobby, which is also getting a documentary this month. It follows one of the craziest catfishing stories I've ever heard, and you kind of just have to see it to believe it. And this one's kind of crazy, but there was a Chris Brown documentary kind of made in secret called A History of Violence. It's going to be on Hulu, and it was actually made by the people who made Quiet on Set earlier this year. And then in time for spooky season, Disney Plus is putting out Witches, The Truth Behind the Trials. It promises to tell a kind of unknown history about the witch trials starting back when they were taking place in Europe. And then the one I'm probably the most excited for is a Netflix doc called This Is the Zodiac Speaking. It's a 3-part docuseries that apparently really focuses in on one suspect in the Zodiac case. Which ones are you going to be watching this month?
In June 1997, Billy Bob Harrow Jr. got extremely lucky. Let me explain. He became a multimillionaire overnight after winning the $31 million Texas lottery jackpot. This was amazing, especially since before he won this, his life was full of financial struggles, and he, his wife, and 3 children battled every day to make ends meet. So winning this changed the family's life. Billy quit his job and took the family on a trip to Hawaii and generously donated to his church and helped out friends and family. However, not everything was perfect. You see, Billy's newfound wealth led to a lot of his old friends and peers asking him for money and help on a daily basis. This forced Billy to change his phone number, and things just kept getting worse. His life began to slowly unravel, leading to him separating from his wife. On May 22nd, 1999, just shy of the 2-year anniversary of his big win, Billy Bob Harrow Jr. sadly ended his own life. Billy had expressed his unhappiness to a financial advisor shortly before his passing, and he said, "Winning the lottery is the worst thing that ever happened to me."
This man's name is Paul Alexander, and he lived in the iron lung for 70 years. The reason he had to do this is because he contracted polio as a child. Now, living in the iron lung for 70 years is almost unimaginable because that is such a long time to be alive in this thing. But he didn't only do that. He also went on to become a lawyer in Dallas and Fort Worth. And he only recently passed this year at the age of 78, I believe. He graduated from the University of Texas in Austin. He went on to practice law for 30 years. He even had his own celebrations within his own iron lung. As you can see here, he's got balloons, TV, a nice setup. Polio made it so he couldn't even move his lungs. That's why he needed the iron lung. It creates negative air and cycles it back and forth so you can actually breathe. Without this, he would literally be dead. Polio has basically since been eradicated from the world. This is due to vaccines. However, there might be a resurgence because people are becoming anti-vax now. Get your kids vaccinated, what can I say? The most recent case of polio was July of 2022. This was the first case in 3 decades. Let me know what you think about Paul's story in the comment section below. As always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
This is one of the most evil doctors in American history. His name was no joke Dr. Fear, and he worked in the children's ward of one of the worst mental asylums. It was called Pennhurst, and this is coming from a deep dive I just did on the Heart Starts Pounding podcast. Back in the day, a little boy named Robert Height was brought to Pennhurst. He had developmental delays and was going to be put under Dr. Fear's care. But his parents went to see him 2 weeks after they dropped him off at Pennhurst, and what they saw was horrifying. Robert was covered head to toe in cuts and bruises, and he had dried blood on the side of his face. He also didn't recognize his own mother, which they later found out was because of all the drugs that the doctors had given him. And this kind of treatment was what Dr. Fear was known for. He was known to ask other doctors what the most painful shot he could give someone was that wouldn't cause any damage, and then he would administer that shot to people he wanted to punish. And while he was a doctor there, he oversaw the entire children's ward, so he affected tons of children. It's hard to hear these stories from Pennhurst, but there's an important lesson there about disability rights and mental health care in the history of America. I cover that history as well as stories from actual people who were inside of Pennhurst on my podcast, Heart Starts Pounding. Give it a listen and let me know if you know of anyone that ever stayed at Pennhurst. A lot of those people are still alive.
This is the most haunted Walmart in America. It's in Galveston, Texas, and it was actually built on the site of the former St. Mary's Orphan Asylum, which was destroyed in the hurricane of 1900. There's actually a historical marker right near the Walmart that describes the story of this place. When the storm hit Galveston in 1900, the nuns attempted to save as many kids as possible, tied the children's wrists together with clothesline, and then tied the clothesline around the waists of the nuns. However, the hurricane hit harder than expected, and when people looked through the ruins of the orphanage afterwards, they found the bodies of all the children tied together, drowned, tied up to the nuns. Since this Walmart was built near the site of the original orphan asylum, many workers have claimed to have experienced paranormal activity inside. An employee at one point heard a girl crying for help, but when he looked for her, he couldn't find her. People have also reported seeing toys move by themselves in these aisles, and heard disembodied laughter. What do you think? Would you shop at this Walmart, or is it too spooky?
CCTV showed some of the most shocking footage of an XL bully I've ever seen. In a matter of days, a child would be dead. In November 2021, Jack Liss asked his mum Emma if he could go out to play. The 10-year-old should have been safe going to the local skate park. Unfortunately, he made a detour that would cost him his life. Not long after, Emma got a knock on the door that would change her life forever. Sirens could be heard in the background as Emma came to the horrific realization that her son had been attacked. As paramedics rushed to the scene, the local community was stunned. An XL bully named Beast had attacked the young boy, and soon Emma got the horrific news that Jack had not survived. Police then had the difficult job of finding out who was responsible and pursuing justice for Jack and his family. But Jack wouldn't be the only victim of this controversial breed. Hear Emma's heartbreaking story in her own words, and listen to other shocking cases on Crimes That Shook Britain Mondays at 9 on the Crime and Investigation channel, or stream now on Crime and Investigation Play. I'll pop a link in my bio for more on Crimes That Shook Britain.
Have you ever heard of the Boy Lover Network? This is really disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised. So in 2011, international police smashed a dark web website called the Boy Lover Network. Here's a screenshot from the website. When investigators dismantled this website, 230 children were saved. Physically, they had been being held captive by pedophiles and filmed, and that abuse was uploaded online. In total, there were over 70,000 members of this website across the world, and authorities eventually uncovered 670 suspects. One of these suspects that was arrested was a man living in Georgia named Joseph Giddings. Now, I don't know why there aren't any photographs of the pedophiles involved in this. Anywhere online, if it was me, I would be blasting these creeps' photos out to the world. But let's talk about Joseph. Joseph, who went by the name Joe Cool on this CP website, was a senior member and moderator, meaning he had a lot of power over these pedophiles. And eventually an undercover officer contacted Joseph, and Joseph provided him with 2 DVDs full of the most graphic, vile CP CSAM you can possibly imagine. But Joseph only received 11 years in prison. And this happened in 2011, which means that Joseph is out in the free world again today. For victimizing thousands of children and being a part of one of the biggest pedophile rings on planet Earth, he got 11 years in prison. And although some arrests were made, I believe they arrested people in 30 different countries, they barely even carved out a chunk of the 70,000 pedophiles that were active on that website. That means that there are thousands, dozens of thousands of pedophiles that are out there in the world that were never caught, never exposed. They could be your friends, they could be your family, your boss, your coworker, your doctor. Yeah, I forgot to mention there were doctors, police officers, and teachers involved in this thing too. These people are everywhere. And in my mind, the only thing that I can do here is to help raise awareness and keep people talking about these things so they aren't forgotten. So we can hopefully put some pressure on government officials and people to actually do something about this shit. If you want to join me on my journey to expose pedophile rings, and you want to learn about the terrible things our own government does to promote people like that, listen to my podcast, The Conspiracy Files. It's available on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We do super deep dives on subjects like this. Or you can watch the video version here. If you haven't seen this video, this will enlighten you and show you that the governments are involved with these things.
This man killed his best friend for taking videos of his daughter. This case takes place in Russia in September 2021. Vyacheslav Matrosov was a 34-year-old man who was known by his nickname Slava. He is a husband and father and a very hard-working man who worked in a factory to provide for his family. While working at the factory, Slava made friends with a 32-year-old man named Oleg who is on the left. The two became close and would often go out and get drinks together. Slava trusted Oleg a lot and considered him to be his best friend. When Slava and his wife needed someone to watch their children, Oleg would be there to help whenever. However, the trust Oleg grew with Slava was for a very unsettling reason. He built up the trust so he can get access to Slava's daughter, who was just 6 at the time. For a couple of years, if Slava and his wife needed someone to watch their kids, they would enlist Oleg every time, who was always happy to help his best friend. In September of 2021, Slava and Oleg were out drinking together, and at some point throughout the night, Oleg fell asleep. Slava then took Oleg's phone to see what he was looking at, and Slava found a very unsettling and disturbing video on his phone. He played the video and saw Oleg forcing himself on a female. Slava then made an awful discovery and realized the female victim in the video was his eldest daughter. And despite being overwhelmed by rage, Slava gave Oleg the opportunity to do one of two things. Either Oleg turned himself into the police along with all the evidence and admit to this awful crime, or Slava would take matters into his own hands. He told his former best friend that if he didn't choose the first option, he would kill him. But Oleg had other plans. Instead of turning himself in, he vanished. He ran from the village and went into hiding. Slava then went to the authorities and told them everything Oleg had done. After showing the police what he found on the phone, the police began a manhunt. The news of the crime spread like wildfire in the village, and people were extremely disgusted at what Oleg had done. And even worse, on a number of occasions, he would look after other people's children too. And many became worried that there could be more victims, and sadly, they were right. There was many more videos found on Oleg's phone which proved this wasn't his first victim. For 5 years, he would torment the young in the village and threaten them to stay quiet or else. Oleg would form relationships and friendships with people for this disgusting reason. And as I said, the police were supposed to start looking for Oleg, but after days, it came out they haven't even began searching for him yet. So Slava instead began to track him down. And after a week or so, Slava found him. What happens next is up to speculation, as some believe Slava wasn't telling the truth. Slava was able to track down Oleg and forced him into a secluded forest. It's here where Slava claims he forced Oleg to dig his own grave at knife point, and after digging the grave, Slava gave Oleg the same option again, either turn himself into the police or take his own life. After this second ultimatum, Oleg tried to rush at Slava, and according to Slava, Oleg accidentally stabbed himself in the stomach, resulting in him dying. Essentially, he ran into the knife a number of times. After this, Slava placed Oleg in the shallow grave and covered his body with dirt. He then left the forest and made his way back to the village. After some time passed, Slava turned himself in at the police station. He told them that Oleg stumbled into the knife during the scuffle outside the village in a forest. A week after Slava had seen the video, Oleg was dead. And this story about his death became big news and even spread to other countries. Many people looked at Slava as a hero, but legally he had killed someone who wasn't proven guilty yet. So Slava was arrested by the police. This had backlash as many people didn't see Slava as a danger to the public and believed he should be released at once. Everyone was on his side. Even a former Russian presidential candidate came forward and sided with Slava. After authorities analyzed Oleg's stab wounds, it was found the injury wasn't sustained in the forest like Slava claimed, but instead at a different location. Everyone then came together to fund Slava's legal battle, saying any father would have done the same thing. And in a landmark decision, the charges against Slava would change from murder to inciting someone to take their own life. And this charge carries a way lesser sentence than murder. In 2022, Slava was found guilty and was sentenced to 18 months in a strict Russian penal colony. Even to this day, Slava remained true to the story he told police and denies killing his best friend. Slava only served 6 months of his sentence after being freed a year early. So what are your thoughts on this case? Do you think Slava was in the right doing what he did? Let me know your thoughts on this. I'm very curious to see your guys' opinions.
This horrifying video went viral after this girl ended up dead. This video is incredibly triggering and disturbing, so please be warned. On the 7th of September 2012, a video was posted online titled "My Story: Struggling, Bullying, Unaliving, and blank." The girl who posted it was Amanda Michelle Todd. She was 15 years old, living in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, and I hope I've pronounced that right. Throughout the video, she tells a harrowing tale to her audience through flashcards. She states that when she was in 7th grade, which is around 12 to 13 years old, she moved in with her dad and was going online to try and make friends. She started talking to a stranger who essentially groomed her. He complimented her looks, and after around a year of doing this, he pressured her to reveal what was under her top. She had no idea he was actually screen recording. He went on to control and blackmail her by threatening to release these images. Now, he did end up exposing these images online, and police came to Amanda in 2010 to give her the news that these images were out there. She was obviously absolutely traumatized by this. She started using substances and alcohol to cope. Her family actually moved house, but unfortunately, this didn't end there. The following year, her online stalker reappeared. This time he made online social media accounts with the explicit photo and started adding her classmates as a friend. She was bullied at her new school as a result of this. She eventually had to move schools, and she really needed a friend to turn to. It was actually a guy at her school that she ended up using as a shoulder to cry on. They got close, but he then pressured her to come over to his house. The pair ended up being intimate, and it transpired that he actually had a girlfriend. A week after this happened, Amanda was confronted by a big group of people. She was screamed at and physically attacked. She returned home and attempted to unalive herself. She had to get her stomach pumped and was then sent back to school, but unfortunately, her doing this actually just increased the bullying. It wasn't enough to get the trolls to leave her alone. She was taunted by her classmates, and in March 2012, the family had to move once again. The same exact routine then continued. The stalker would create new accounts when she went to a new school. He would then add her classmates and even her teachers and the parents of the kids. They would all end up seeing the explicit photos of the child, and it would cause her just more trauma. Her mental health continued to plummet, and despite getting counselling, she once again attempted to unalive herself. In the video that she ultimately posted online, she held up a card stating, "I have nobody, I need someone," and a sad face. On the 10th of October 2012, her body was found at her home. Amanda unfortunately could see no way out. Dutch police eventually came forward to state that they had arrested a man after finding chilling chat logs involving extortion. He was 35-year-old Aydin Coban. Now, he was charged with multiple serious offences, including SA, child SA material, and extortion. There were a staggering 39 alleged victims. He was ultimately convicted and sentenced to just 6 years in prison for causing Amanda's death. He will then serve an 11-year prison sentence for convictions relating to 33 other victims.
The Haiti orphan smuggling case is a really bizarre one, so let's talk about it. On January 12, 2010, a massive earthquake hit Haiti. Thousands died, thousands were left without their homes, and after hearing about this earthquake, a group of 10 American Baptist missionaries from Idaho set off to head down there. So this group was associated with something called the New Life Children's Refuge. It was a group dedicated to finding homes for orphans. Now, after the earthquake, the New Life Children's Refuge leased a hotel in the Dominican Republic, where they intended on bringing orphans, according to their mission statement. So these missionaries flew to Haiti on January 22nd, and on January 26th, they had gathered a group of 40 children and they headed for the Dominican Republic. However, when they tried to cross the border, the missionaries were arrested. As it turns out, they didn't have the proper paperwork, and they had literally just been attempting to steal these children from their home country. This is really interesting now. These missionaries claim that all of these children were orphans. They had asked these kids if they had parents, where they had come from, and apparently they had all told them they're orphans. But when the kids were questioned at the border, it turned out that almost none of them were orphans. They all had families, they didn't know who these people were, and they had literally been taken. According to these children's parents and relatives, the missionaries had told them that after the earthquake relief efforts were through, they could come back and get their kids and bring them home. However, WikiLeaks leaked some documents relating to this, which clearly showed that the missionaries' mission statement was adoption. So they were planning on giving these kids away or rehoming them. But here's where things get incredibly weird. So in the days following the group's arrest, a man named Jorge Puello came forward and stated he was representing some of the missionaries. Jorge claimed that he was a lawyer, but it was later found out he's not a lawyer. And Jorge later admitted that at the time he was being questioned and investigated for participating in sex trafficking in El Salvador. He was also wanted for smuggling people across the US-Canadian border. Eventually, Jorge served time in Canada and the United States, and it's still really unclear what his whole deal with these missionaries was. So this is already bizarre, right? Like, what were these missionaries doing? They were trying to literally kidnap these children out of the country. They told the parents that they were going to bring them back, but clearly they stated they wanted to have them adopted. They lied about certain things. They lied about the kids being orphans, and they clearly just weren't being truthful. Well, things got even weirder when Bill Clinton inserted himself into the case. With everything going on at the time, he stated that they needed to find a solution to this quickly, because all those missionaries had been charged with kidnapping. Keep in mind, they had attempted to, according to the law, kidnap 33 children. Now, eventually, most of these people were freed and sent back to the United States, never served any time for any of this weird behavior. One woman named Laura Silsby got 6 months in prison there, but she was found guilty, sentenced to her time that had already been served, and she was let go. This is a really weird case. What do you guys think about all this? I know WikiLeaks inserted itself and leaked some documents because they believed that there was something weird going on here, but I just don't really know what it is, and I only like to make assertions if I have evidence. I am curious to hear your thoughts, though, in the comment section, because this is just really a strange story.
Imagine your brother-in-law dying under suspicious circumstances, but you can't trust the police to investigate. The victim's family are rich, powerful, and virtually run the entire island. You have no choice but to turn to a former NYPD detective who is now working as a private investigator. The key to most murder cases is the motive, but finding it won't be that simple. Killer Heat is a brand new red-hot thriller out now on Prime Video. Joseph Gordon-Levitt stars as private investigator Nick Barley. He ends up entwined in a world of deceit, lies, and mystery. But will he be able to uncover the truth, or will he be left to face his own mistakes and dark past? Now streaming on Prime Video.
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
This man was going to plant flowers and grow food with this man's body. On December 24th, 2019 in Michigan, a 25-year-old man named Kevin Bacon was talking to another man on the dating app Grindr. Kevin was a hairdresser and was going through tough times in his life. He was trying to save money to move somewhere else so he can get a fresh start. Kevin told his roommate that he found someone on Grindr and that he was going out for the night. The doorbell camera shows him leaving around 5 p.m. and sadly, this was the last time he was ever seen. The next day was Christmas, and Kevin had planned to have breakfast with his entire family, but concerns started to grow when he didn't show up. After he missed the breakfast, his family called his cell phone, but there was no answer. They then went to his apartment, but Kevin was nowhere to be found, and fearing the worst, his father called the police to report him missing. Friends, family, and police searched neighboring towns, forest areas, and farmlands. For 3 days, the group searched for Kevin in hopes of finding him alive or clues on where he could be. They then found Kevin's car parked outside of a store, and inside the car was his phone, wallet, and some of his clothes. The police checked his phone and found messages with Kevin and another man, and it was the man he met on Christmas Eve. The police used this information, which led them to a house where a 51-year-old man named Mark Latunsky lived. And on the 28th of December, the police knocked on the door and conducted a search of the whole property. Mark invited the police in and was wearing no shirt and only a brown leather kilt. The police then went around the house and made their way into the basement where they found a secret room. And inside this room, they made a truly horrifying discovery. Mark had strung up Kevin by his ankles with rope, and chunks of flesh were missing from his body. Kevin had a stab wound on the back of his neck and his throat had been slashed. And also, Kevin's testicles were missing, and Mark used a knife to remove them and then deep fried them and ate them. After finding Kevin in this awful state, Mark was arrested and then he told the police his version of what happened. He told them the two of them met on December 24th after talking on Grindr. They agreed to meet in a parking lot, the same place Kevin's car was found. He then said that they agreed to act out a fantasy Kevin wanted to try. Kevin stripped naked and put on a blindfold, ankle restraints, and wrist restraints. They then went back to Mark's house where they had consensual sex, and after, Mark claimed that Kevin told him he wanted to end his own life. Mark then claimed that they agreed he would assist in killing Kevin, under the condition that Kevin's body would be used for a purpose. Mark said he used the knife to stab Kevin in the back of the neck and then took him to the secret room and strung him up with rope. He then opened up a trap door underneath where Kevin was hanging from and slit his throat. The blood drained from his body and dripped onto the dirt outside from the open trap door. This was done so Kevin's body can fertilize the plants outside the house. As part of the agreement, Mark said he would use Kevin's bone marrow to plant tulips, his intestines to grow chestnuts, and would use his muscles to make human beef jerky. Mark also admitted to cutting off Kevin's genitals and eating them. Mark is a father of 4 and a highly intelligent man, and he even earned a master's degree in chemistry. But he had many mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and even paranoid schizophrenia. He had medication that could help him with these issues, but his ex-wife said he refused to take them. Mark's story did have some inconsistencies though. While the two were texting on Grindr, Kevin had asked for a reassurance that he would be safe during the meeting multiple times. There were no signs that Kevin wanted to be hurt or killed by Mark. Mark even had other victims too who escaped, but they didn't suffer the extent Kevin did. Mark's husband of 3 years, Jamie Arnold, told the media he had no idea of Mark's mental health issues until July 2019. He said he suspected something was wrong with him, but didn't think he was capable of committing such a disturbing act. Jamie left the house in September and didn't live there during the time this happened. Mark was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for committing this awful act. This is just honestly disturbing, and it goes to show that you have to be careful with who you talk to online. May Kevin rest in peace. He did not deserve this at all.
Police have confirmed this week that some of the bones found on the Sunderland coast are in fact human. This could be someone's loved one, and police are now working to identify who this person is. If you hadn't heard about this yet, there were various reports that came in throughout February and March of body parts or bones being found at multiple locations in Sunderland, including Marine Walk near Taroka Beach and Queen's Parade in Seaburn. Some of the bones were quickly identified as being that of a baby seal, but other bones have been confirmed as being human. There could of course be a number of explanations for these body parts. An accidental drowning, a suicide, or it could be something more sinister. There were reports that I read of some of the body parts being found wrapped in plastic, which leads me to believe that it is something more sinister, but these reports have not been confirmed. I'll keep an eye out for any developments on this case, and I really hope they can identify this person so that they can be properly laid to rest.
I seen this video. It was a ghost call or whatever. So this police dispatcher received a call from a funeral home, but it was closed. And this happened at 3:28 a.m. by the way. I'm gonna let you guys hear the call and stuff, and let me see what you guys hear.
I hate hearing things, bro.
It respects the cops, bro, because I feel like cops be saying some and they can't say anything.
911, this is Erica. How can I help you? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Okay, I heard like hello and it's cold.
I heard a guy. Apparently, the guy said help me, and then after she said hello again, it said help.
Yeah, because I heard can you help me?
And then they go send out police, a unit to go check out what's going on and if everything's okay. Guy gets there, realizes that the place is locked up. Bro. It's dark in there, and there's no sign of like life in the building, bro. So it's like, who the fuck would have called
at that time?
Yeah.
Where was that at?
Colorado.
If there are any cops out there who experience freaky shit, let us call you. Let's hear that scary shit.
You know what's the craziest part too?
This is the moment Walter Medina was apprehended last week after holding a woman hostage for over 2 months and subjecting her to horrific abuse. The victim burst through the door of a gas station on April 1st. She was visibly bruised and beaten, and she was asking for help. Staff immediately called 911, but Walter managed to escape in his van. A high-speed chase ensued with Lakeland Police Department and Florida Highway Patrol hot on Walter's tail.
He flew down the highway at speeds reaching 100 miles per hour, and eventually he crashed into a barrier, wrecking his van. He stepped out of his van, and as he reached back inside, presumably for a weapon, the police deployed their canine Rico, and he took Walter down to the ground. Walter was arrested and he was stretchered away, and his victim was taken to hospital. She had multiple broken ribs from being beaten with a baseball bat. She had extensive bruising all over her face and body, and she had multiple puncture wounds from being stabbed with a screwdriver. Walter Medina has previously served prison time for false imprisonment after kidnapping another woman, and he now faces multiple charges, including armed kidnapping and attempted murder in the second degree.
What this woman escaped from is like something from a horror film. Earlier this week, a dramatic scene unfolded in Florida. It was a typical Monday morning in Tampa, with people going about their usual business. That was until a van appeared in the local area. A woman escaped from the van and ran to ask for help. She flew into the Walgreens pharmacy and begged people to ring police. Horrifically, the woman had several injuries on her body, including on her face and puncture wounds. The staff rang police, who immediately turned up to investigate. Now, the woman had her identity withheld, but it transpired that she'd allegedly met a man named Walter Medina in January. She told police that he'd assaulted her with a baseball bat and a screwdriver. The 48-year-old man was arrested after a dramatic car chase that ended in a crash. He was charged with multiple offences, including attempted murder and armed kidnapping. The woman alleged that the man had been keeping her captive in his house, torturing her and assaulting her for an agonising 2 months. She states that he gave her substances and was mentally and physically abusive. The woman actually had broken ribs and was taken to hospital. She said that she'd been transported by a van by him and used the opportunity to escape when he left the van. Officers stated this suspect's violent reign of terror is finally over.
Disturbing episode of La Rosa de Guadalupe. Ooh. This episode was about Justin Bieber, right?
Really?
Justin Bieber was going to be in Monterrey, Mexico. And a lot of people were going crazy over Justin Bieber tickets. Like all the teenage girls wanting to see all their crush. It starts off with these girls. They're around the age of 13 to 14. Super hardcore believers. If you see in the room, they literally have like pictures all over. So obviously they want to get tickets as well. The tickets are like 2,000 pesos, which is like $100 and something US. But Rosaura is like, oh, I don't want my quince anymore.
I'm really wondering when the fuck this is going.
So Lolita, she's even like, oh, I'm going to get a job. She ends up getting a job at a little cafe. They find out these tickets are getting sold online as a pre-sale. And they're like, fuck, how are we even going to get the ticket? The girls end up saying like, yo, we should camp for them. And they stay there all fucking night. The next morning comes, they're sold out. And then out of nowhere, Rosaura is like, I'm gonna put on social media, is there anybody who has a ticket? I will give them my virginity for a ticket.
I had a feeling it was gonna end like
and
this.
She ends up gaslighting her into saying
she should do it too.
She's like, you're right, I have to do whatever it takes to see Justin Bieber. A couple days pass and like some guy tries to approach Lolita at her job. She's like, what are you doing, 30? And he's like, you're the one who posted this shit on social media, what the fuck? Out of nowhere, her friend Rosaura comes to school with a fucking ticket all hyping. Another girl that has a ticket as well is like, let me see your ticket. They compare it to each other. Your ticket kind of looks off. They go to like the booth and shit to make sure if it's real or not. They scan it and it's like, nah, like this ticket doesn't work. It's fake. She goes to the guy.
This woman from Cheshire killed her boyfriend by running him over with her car. It was spring 2022 and philosophy student Alice Wood was dating Ryan Watson. Ryan was just 24 years old and was working as a support worker for the brain injury charity Headway. The pair were living together in Road Heath and had recently bought a home together. It was around 11:30 p.m. on the 6th of May when the pair were attending a party in Stoke-on-Trent. They'd both been drinking and tension was growing throughout the night. Witnesses reported that Ryan had been getting on quite well with another female at the party and Alice wasn't happy. Alice accused Ryan of flirting with the other female and the pair started arguing about who should drive home. It's reported that Alice then drove the pair about 15 minutes back to their home in Oak Street in Road Heath. Neighbours then reported hearing shouting, slamming of doors and the revving of a car. When Ryan was out of the vehicle, Alice used the car as a weapon and launched the vehicle at him. She intentionally drove at him 3 times. On the 3rd attempt, she did hit him with the vehicle and dragged him over 150 metres along the road. She then decided to stop the car and pretended to neighbours that it was an accident. She asked the neighbour to ring the ambulance for them. Ryan's cause of death was determined to be crush asphyxiation. Alice wrote to the judge to claim that she didn't murder her boyfriend, she simply used the car as a weapon for intimidation. The judge did not accept this, and ultimately Alice was sentenced to 18 years in prison for murder.
Martin Weiss is another Nickelodeon pedophile that they don't want you talking about. And he defended pedophilia allegations against him by claiming that his 11-year-old victim wanted it. This is Martin Weiss. He's a former Hollywood talent agent and a pedophile. Back in 2011, one of Martin Weiss's former clients, an 18-year-old actor turned musician, reported him to the police. This client claimed that Martin Weiss sexually assaulted him from the age of 11 all the way till the age of 15, or the entire time that he was his talent agent. Martin Weiss also threatened the victim's career. This is a quote from the press release. They said, "The victim said Martin told him that what they were doing was common practice in the entertainment industry, and if the victim were to tell anyone, it would ruin the victim's career and hurt them both." The victim, though, finally fed up with the abuse and fearing for the safety of other children, went to the police. That's when Martin was ultimately arrested and charged with 8 felonies. But as reported in the LA Times, when Martin was confronted by authorities about the assault of a minor, he claimed the kid wanted it. This is a quote from the LA Times. During the November 15th conversation, Martin Weiss claimed the boy invited the interaction and claimed that the Penn State situation was different because those kids didn't want it. So Martin Weiss, who was a prolific talent agent, worked on a number of different shows like iCarly, Parenthood, The Muppet Movie. So yeah, this is extremely disturbing, and I think that the Nickelodeon reckoning is still going to continue for a while.
This is the Pitbull video, one of the hardest cartel execution videos to watch explained. The video that I'm about to explain is extremely graphic, and I don't recommend searching for it. The video begins with a man lying on his back on the ground, and 2 men are holding his legs open. He's being restrained. And in total, there is 5 perpetrators and 1 victim. And also 2 pit bull dogs. Apparently, this is the victim's punishment for allegedly doing something with a kid or to a kid. The victim is naked, and at the start of the video, the dog has done most of the work. The dog already ripped off the man's privates, and it's just a bloody mess. The dog continues to rip pieces of flesh off of where his privates used to be, and the victim is being held down, and he is also gagged so he can't scream. But sometimes the gag came loose, and at this point you could hear the man scream in pain. The victim was even talking, but I couldn't translate it, but that means he was completely conscious during this, which I can't even imagine the pain. As a man, this might be one of the worst videos out there. Funky Town is bad, Ghost Rider is bad, but as a man, I can't imagine anything more painful than a pit bull ripping off your junk while you're still alive. Not many people mention this video with the other disturbing ones, but it's definitely up there. There's not any information about the victim after the video. I don't know if he died, but it's safe to assume he did. He lost a lot of blood, and if a dog eats your privates, you will most likely get an infection and die from it. All in all, this video is very graphic, very real, and very disturbing. Please do yourself a favor and never go searching for this video, especially if you're a man.
So this is incredibly disturbing. A teacher at a Christian school in Florida was just arrested for using a yearbook to make images of his underage students online. You can't make this stuff up. This is what's happening every day here in America. So this is 67-year-old Stephen Hauser. He taught 3rd grade science at the Beacon Christian Academy in Newport Richey, Florida. Now, everybody seemed to love Stephen. That is, until an anonymous tip was made recently that led to his arrest. So, according to Stephen himself, yes, he admitted this, he used a yearbook containing photos of his students to generate these child porn images. I don't know exactly how many videos or photos Stephen had in his possession, but he admitted to using 3 of his underage students' photos to create this disgusting material. And according to a news report, authorities found 2 CP photos and 3 CP videos in Stephen's possession. I don't know if that stuff was AI generated or not, but either way, this is just a disturbing, sick story. And it's frightening thinking about how predators like this guy are going to be able to use AI and technology like that to fulfill these sick and twisted fantasies that they have. Like, what regulations do we have to prohibit this stuff from happening? After all, a tip from somebody was what got Stephen arrested. Who knows how many millions of other people are out there doing this sort of thing that haven't been caught and may not ever be caught. It's truly just some disturbing stuff, and I hate even thinking about it. If you want to hear more true crime stories, listen to the podcast Murder in America that I co-host with my wife Courtney. It's available on all streaming platforms.
These are family photos with disturbing backstories. Up first is a picture of a father and daughter, right? Well, this is Franklin Delano Floyd and Suzanne Savakis. And Franklin kidnapped Suzanne in 1974 when she was under the age of 10. It was his stepdaughter, and he would go on to raise her as his own daughter, putting her through high school under several pseudonyms and having a son with her in 1988. He would then marry her in 1989 under the name Tanya Hughes. In 1990, Suzanne had decided to leave Franklin and take her son Michael with her. And in April of that year, she was found beaten and bruised on the side of the highway. And she would eventually die in the hospital. Michael then went into foster care and was adopted, only to be kidnapped by Franklin Floyd in 1994 and never to be seen again. Next up is just a normal family photo, right? Well, the man in the yellow sweater is actually John Edward Robinson, who is a serial killer. And the baby that he's holding is Tiffany Stassi, whose mother he murdered the day before. He later gave baby Tiffany to his brother, saying she was adopted. His brother, along with Tiffany, didn't find out the truth for 15 years. Only 8 of his victims have ever been identified, and he's been on death row since 2000. Finally is just a picture of a mother with her 2 sons. Well, the kid on the right's name is Bart Whittaker, and he paid 2 of his buddies to murder his family that night. They would kill the mother and brother, but the father who took the photo survived. Bart Whittaker was sentenced to death, but after his father strongly opposed of it, which makes no sense, Texas Governor Greg Abbott granted him clemency, and he is now serving a life sentence.
The child's death was thought to be an accident until shocking text messages were revealed. It was the 15th of June 2023. Samantha Wishman was 32 years old, living in Wisconsin with her boyfriend and his 3-year-old son. Police were called to a home in Marinette on the day in question by Samantha. She reported that the 3-year-old had fallen down the stairs the night before. When officers arrived at the property, the little boy was not breathing. According to police, the father of the child seemed really frantic and wanted to get him to hospital straight away. Samantha, however, was reportedly much more calm and seemed to be trying to get the other children under control. The boy tragically passed away after being rushed to hospital. Now, initially the child's death was classed as an accident, but that's when everything started to change. Investigators determined that the death was not an accident as a result of a fall. This was after the autopsy showed that the child had broken ribs, a punctured lung, concussion, and bruising on his head and body. It was determined that he died from blunt force trauma. Investigators seized Samantha's phone as part of the investigation, and what they found was truly chilling. She allegedly sent disturbing text messages to the child's dad stating, "I'm ready to hurt these mother bleep kids. Nobody bleep understands. I can't breathe. This is so much harder now that I'm having more problems breathing. These mother bleep won't bleep. Stop. I'm ready to lose my bleep. I can't breathe. I can't yell, so I'm just a joke around here." An expert claimed that the injuries on the boy's body